Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Books and Beer. It's amazing that you're joining us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just before we get started, and I talked to Dave there, I want to let you know that we've pre-recorded it today because I'm traveling today, and Dave a conflict with appointment he had as well, so we couldn't make the normal live time. So please comment as usual, but we won't be able to respond to your comments on screen. I'll be there commenting back at the time, but we won't respond to them on screen. So don't think we're ignoring you or being rude. Dave, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Luke?
Yeah, very well,
Good.
thank you. Very well. Pleased to be having this conversation after, well, we've known each other sort of online, haven't we? Connected
Yeah,
through Facebook and the various
yeah,
things for a year or 2 years, even, you know.
yeah. Maybe a couple of years at least. I'm not sure exactly when, but I know it's been a
Mm,
little while.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you've done a few of my covers, and I think the first one you did was Berlin, wasn't it? And that's almost 2 years old. So
I think that's right. Yeah, yeah.
long
Wow,
time
that's
ago.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How long have you been writing then? How long have you been in the? Because you've definitely got more books out than me. I think.
If you, I
Yeah.
guess technically speaking, I mean, I graduated my college with a with an English education degree, so I knew I was a writer at that point even, but I hadn't published anything. But that was way before the Kindle days.
Mm.
And I was able to publish a book that I wrote as a part of one of my assignments in college. And what happened is they gave us an assignment and said, "Hey, do this for the beginning of a book and see what it comes out as. And later on, if you want to do something with it, that's fine." So I kept it and rewrote it and remolded it and everything. And I published it way back when Create Space was a thing. And the only reason I did that was so that my family, friends, people like that could actually get a copy. At that point, there still was no digital, there was no
Mm.
Kindle or e-reader or anything like that. And then I think KDP bought CreateSpace or absorbed CreateSpace or whatever. I don't know if they were owned by the same company or whatever, but they absorbed. And then I figured out that there was such a thing as self-publishing, and I think that was 2009 or 10 maybe. And I
Gosh, a long
published.
time ago then. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, way back. Supposedly during the Kindle Gold Rush, but nothing happened for me. So
Mm.
I put it up there.
Well,
I
you're
had it.
still here, aren't you? You're
Yeah,
still
I'm
doing
here.
it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah. I made it. I made it.
Yeah.
So that's way back. Yeah, 2009 was the first book I think I put on Amazon, and then it wasn't until 2015 or 16 that I started with thrillers.
Okay, so what was that original book then? What sort of genre would you have put that in?
That book was fantasy, epic fantasy in the way of the Lord of the Rings and things like that.
Hmm.
But my version was a little silly, like it had comedy in it.
Yeah.
So I was a huge fan of Monty Python and things like that. So it just made sense for me to make it funny or try to make it funny and very clean. So I guess in today's world, you almost could call it young adult
Yeah.
or YA. So, but it's still out there. It's going to be. I'm re-releasing it. I'm rewriting it right now, expanding it, making it a little bit more serious, fixing all the errors, all the problems, and so it'll
Oh,
be re-released
fantastic.
pretty soon. Yeah.
That is something I've enjoyed about your books, though, and I've read several of them over the years because you've done various collaborations with other
Hmm.
authors too, which we'll talk about. But all of them they all seem to have a real sense of humour to them.
Yeah.
Particularly the Bodine books that I've read. They don't take themselves too seriously. There's always a bit of a joke going on. The
Yeah.
good guy always wins in some
Yeah.
slightly almost ridiculous way,
Yeah.
but it's a great story all the same.
For sure. Yeah. I like to make it funny because I like it to be funny. It's
Mm,
whatever you read, and I read what's commonly called Florida fiction, which is thrillers. They're crime thrillers, and something bad happens, but it's not it's not sort of thrilling in the way like psychological thrillers are. It could happen, but you're not really scared of it.
yeah.
So it's good that I like those, so I write them, and I hope they're pretty good.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They're all quite the ones I've read. I know you've done some based in Washington, and these, and but the ones I've read are based around the Florida Keys, and they are
Yeah,
the sort of tropical setting oozes through. The
yeah,
main character doesn't wear anything more than shorts and flip flops
that's right.
most of the
Yeah,
time.
that's right. That's me living vicariously through
Yeah.
my character. I want to be Troy.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have much experience of that style of life, you know?
Gosh, I wish. I have some friends who are in that tropical authors kind of, gang, and we all talk about it. Some of them actually like, they have boats and they live on the coast and they dive and they do this. And I'm like, well, I'm a tennis pro in the mountains of Tennessee. I don't know if that counts, but we visit often. I like to go to the beach whenever we go. So
How far are you from the beach then in Tennessee? I don't know the
technically
landscape.
speaking, we're about 7 to 8 hours away from
Wow.
most beaches. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you drive, if you drive.
Because
Uh,
that's quite central, isn't it? Tennessee
yeah.
in the States.
Well, it's the center of the South. I would call it the
Hmm.
center of the South. So, if you go east, you can go to East Coast and get to South Carolina or North Carolina in 7 hours, 8 hours, or you can go Gulf Coast, which is Florida or even Alabama parts of it, and that's 7 or 8 hours also. So
Uh-huh.
either way you go, you're about 7 or 8 hours from the nearest beach. So
So I'm going to talk about my beer quickly because I want to do that, and then we'll come back to this conversation because I'm
right,
enjoying that because I love travel and these sorts of things too. But
okay.
I had David Wood on last week, and I didn't have a beer, and he did, and it was 10 a.m. for him
Oh
where he
gosh,
lives, and I felt really bad that for me it was sort of 4 or 5 in the
yeah.
afternoon, and I didn't do it, you know. So
Oh,
I'm having this one for our conversation today, a dry neck from
nice.
the Witchwood Brewery,
Okay.
which is great. I always say that because one day, Dave, I've got the idea that a beer company is going to phone me up and say,
Mhm.
"We'd love to sponsor your show. Here's a crate of lovely free beer." You know, it hasn't happened yet, but one day
That is
maybe
one
it
of
will.
the cool things about this area is there are a lot of breweries around here. A lot of
Mm,
the craft breweries are at Asheville, North Carolina, which is maybe 3 or 4 miles, 100 miles east of us. And then there's a lot of little microbrews in Knoxville. So maybe I know somebody. Maybe I can
yeah,
do
absolutely. If they would be a
that.
bit of a shipping cost, but yeah, absolutely. I'd be
They've
more.
probably got some of the bigger ones. They've got breweries or they've got distribution. So we can get you.
Mm,
We can get you
mm.
something.
Are you a beer drinker yourself, or are you?
Yeah. Yeah, I like beer. I do craft beers and I do more of the IPAs, which are a little
Mm,
bitter. My current brand is sort of Sweetwater 420, which is
mm.
just a middle of the road. It's not a super hoppy beer. It's one you can drink a few of, and then if I get a little more like sipping type beer, I get a porter, a Founder's Porter, or something like
Yes,
that.
I
So I
like a
like my
porter.
yeah. Well, the porter
Hmm.
is my sweet spot. I like a porter better than anything.
I've got really into Guinness quite
Oh yeah.
recently, which is it's one of those that you can get in every pub almost
Yeah.
in the world. When I've been
Yep.
to the States, they have it there
Oh
on
yeah.
tap,
Yeah.
you know, and it's always nice. You can get some
Hmm.
porters that are nice, that are more sort of unique and more interesting, but it's always a decent go
Yeah.
to. Yeah,
I agree.
yeah. So my question for you then is, you live in Tennessee. What was it that made you set your book 7 hours drive away? I mean, there must be. You've talked about mountains and all of the
Hmm.
exciting things that you could have within your sort of location that you are now.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, of course, like just about anyone, I like to vacation at the beach, and I lived in Florida for a little while.
Uh
I
huh.
lived in the Keys. So being a tennis pro and being young and single at the time, I was able to travel to Florida and teach at various locations, even down as far south as Isla Mirada, which is in the Keys, in the chain of the Keys. So it's in my blood a little bit. And we have a standing vacation every single year to Pawleys Island, which is South Carolina.
Uh huh.
So that's where the first Troy book is set, and that's how that came about. So we vacation there. I know all the spots. I know everywhere. Everything to do there. I've been going there for years and years and years, and it just felt right.
Mm.
So that's why. And maybe someday, my writer dreams have me having a small place on the beach that I can go and write and stay and bring the
Yes.
family along. So
That would be the dream, wouldn't
for sure,
it?
yes,
we'll all turn up writers' retreats at
that's
Dave's,
right,
you know,
that's right.
with our
Writer
crates of
retreat,
IPA, you
that's right.
know.
Bring a sleeping bag and a case of IPA, and you'll be good
Yeah,
to go.
that sounds fantastic. No, I totally get that because I set my books all over the world, and I sort of
Yeah,
and particularly for the first few, they were based on places I'd been and loved. Now,
yeah,
now I've written about six. I'm sort of basing them on places that I I've been to more recently, you know,
Yeah.
or I think, oh, that would be a good place, and I'm planning to go to sort of write a book there. But initially, that
Right.
idea of writing a book there was almost like reliving that trip. There was something
Yeah.
really cathartic about thinking, you know, spending all that time looking back through the photos or go on Google Maps and
Hmm.
work out the route and all those
Yeah.
things. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Bring up the satellite image. Where does he have to go? Let's see. Left, right.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. I always say that's our part. That's our job as a writer to, if we've been there, to share the experience. You know,
Mm,
I've been to Pawleys Island. I've been to the Keys. I know a lot of people love the Keys in Florida, and if I know about it, it's my job to, share what I think is cool about it, or
mm.
maybe even show them something cool that they haven't seen before. And I'm one of those writers who I write the real place. If there's
Yeah,
a pub or a bar or a restaurant, I write that place, and I send the character there and describe it, and then somebody might visit the Keys and go, "I've read this. This was in Dave's book." So it's a
yeah.
neat experience.
No, I absolutely love that, and put quite a lot of hard work in mind trying to do that. And I
Hmm.
find the opposite is sometimes true in that when I know I'm going to go somewhere, I'll look up books that are set in that place,
Yeah,
and then find it, and then work out sort of, right, I've got to go to this bar or this place or
yeah,
whatever. You know, these loosely fictional sort of places
that's
into
right.
my
Yeah,
trip.
that's right. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. That's a cool vacation planner. Get a couple of
Mm,
novels and say, "Ooh, I need to go to this place."
absolutely, yeah. It
Yeah,
makes it last a bit longer, or the
that's
planning
right.
last a bit longer. You know.
That's pretty cool. I like it.
So you've got the Bodeian series, which you've got, I think, over 10, haven't you? Books in that.
Yeah, there's
Troy
10.
series. It's Troy that came first, wasn't
Mhm.
it? He's the
Yeah,
bigger brother.
Troy Bodine is the original,
Mm,
and there are nine,
mm.
two of which are one is a novella, so it's a little bit shorter. I think it's just under 50,000 words, and then there's a very very short story that I did for a group project, and so once it was out of that group project, I brought it back in and called it a Troy Bodine book when it's really just kind of a short story.
Mm.
But and I know nobody cares about this, but the way Amazon works, they won't let you number the books and then put like a point 0.5,
Yeah.
because it's technically book 6.5, or comes in between two, and so I just made it number 7, even though it's a tiny little short story.
Mm. No, that makes
Anyway,
sense.
anyway,
And
that's
you're in the process of doing another one, are you? I think
mhm,
I read on your
I
newsletter that
am.
there's another in the works.
Yeah, I have three projects currently going.
Oh no.
That doesn't even include all the cover stuff. So yeah, I am rewriting the Dragon series, the fantasy series, again to bring it up to date, to make it a little bit more adult. And it was lacking in, I would just say, oh, they traveled north, they traveled south, and realize that doesn't really work in the real world. So I had to fix all
Hmm.
that. Anyway,
Hmm.
so that'll come out under a pen name. It's just DF Berens, so that it doesn't mess up. Amazon doesn't like that when you cross
Yeah.
genres. But the Troy book, the next one is Cayo Hueso, which is the Spanish name for Key West.
Oh
Um,
wow. Yeah.
so yeah, so without really revealing any part, that makes no spoilers. It'll have something to do with kind of adventuring. It'll have a gold treasure, and there'll be some twists and turns, and Troy will get into his usual hijinks. And then the third project is I'm working on. I mentioned the tropical authors, um, and I know maybe some of your readers would know Wayne Stinnett, John Cunningham, some pretty big Steve Becker, some big guys in the genre are writing collaborations.
Oh yeah.
So I'm in a group of 4 people. Chris Niles, Stephen Becker, Douglas Pratt, and myself are writing a book together. And so I get to kick it off. I get to write the first part. So I got to get it done before anybody else can do anything. I got to get that thing done. So
That's
it's
great doing it
crazy. Yeah,
because you've done collaborations with you and another author I know, but
I
doing it with
have.
four, how does that change the process? What's that like?
That's different. Yeah. So with one person, obviously you bounce things off of each other, and I would, in most cases, come up with a significant outline, send it to my co-author, and say, "What do you think?" And they would say, "I like this," and they would start. And I we do everything kind of in Google Docs, where I can go along as they do. And
Mm,
that would be Stephen Moore is one of the previous co-authors I've worked with. and he would be riding and I'd be chasing him. So
Mm.
I would ride along right behind him, and he was like, "You need to slow down, man. Gotta get this draft in." But with two people, it's like that. You kind of kick it back and forth. With four people, the process is completely different. Um, and the basic structure is I have a character, Chris has a character,
Uh-huh.
Douglas has a character, and Steven has a character. So we create a protagonist who has an issue, a problem that will take him through each of our characters' sort of areas.
Yeah. So
So I
in the
take the
way that
character. Go ahead. Yeah.
so in the way that a classic thriller might have the protagonist and the antagonist viewpoints sort of sporadically through what's one person writes one viewpoint, another writes another viewpoint, sort of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we were going to do it that way.
Mm.
We were going to do it like that, but we chose to do first person from the newly created protagonist. So we've got
Okay.
a grandfather character who has lost an adopted daughter. That's just the basics, and there are a lot of twists and turns and crazy things that happen. But I take that protagonist through Troy's domain. So he
Hmm.
meets up with Troy. Troy says, "I need you to get you to so and so." So my job is to get that part through, have Troy sort of escort this guy or take this guy through the first hurdle and pass him on.
Uh-huh.
So then when I pass it off, Troy will kind of go out of the story. He may pop up at the end or close to the end, but then the next characters take over and take this protagonist and carry him. And so in
Mm.
that way, I kind of get to say, here's a bunch of breadcrumbs, do whatever you like.
Hmm.
Here's the first 10,000 or not 10,000, sorry. Here's the first 10,000 words. Luke, it's time now for
Yeah.
you.
Get
And you
off your
grab
bum and
it.
do it.
Yep.
Come on.
You read, yeah,
Yeah.
you read it and you
That's
do your thing.
interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned there Troy. Are you just using that as an example, or are you actually bringing Troy from your books into this project between the
Yep.
four of you?
Troy will
And
be in this one. Yeah.
and will these other authors bring notable characters from their own work into this?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, what a
So
great idea!
each author has their stable characters or their character that they want to put into this, and they know them. I know them from just reading them, but I don't know how they would react.
Yeah.
I can't write for those characters, but I know I can write for Troy and pass him along with enough. We've got a sort of a skeleton outline that we know I got to get this protag from introduction to point B. And then Chris, I think, is next, and she'll take it and she'll run with it through her character's world.
Such a
So
great idea. I
I've
really
never done
like
it
that.
before either. There are two.
Mm.
There are two or no, maybe one. There's one book out currently that was the first sort of experiment like that. Uh, Graceless, I think, is the title, and it's by all those guys. Wayne Stinnett. I can't remember exactly who. Wayne Stinnett, Nick Sullivan, Nick Harvey,
Mm.
and somebody else. I'm sorry, John Cunningham. So big. I mean, those are big guys in the tropical space. Those are big names. And they did one, and then we were all like, "Well, we want to do one too. We want to do one too." So we gathered some people and off we ran.
Yeah, brilliant. I like that because I've done some writing with Steve as well, and I'm
Yeah.
sure I'll do some collaborations with. But the idea of doing that so that you bring your own characters together, I think, is a very powerful one because
Hmm.
it'd be interesting from a writer's and a reader's perspective too, because you can imagine, I can see why you're thinking that, because you've got all your individual pools of readers and they're going to come together and be like, this is amazing, all my favorite
Yeah.
characters in one book.
Yeah, it is. It's really neat. It's a great idea. I didn't invent it. These
Mm.
other guys came up with it, and I said, "Oh man, that is really cool." And I read it, and it's short and it's a quick read, and I read the thing in like maybe 3 hours, 2 3 hours, and
Yeah.
I immediately got onto we have a sort of a mastermind group, and I said, "Hey, we got to do one. I want to do one. I want to do one
Mm.
bad." So I kind of, even though I have a Troy book right now, I'm going to use this as a bridge. So in between the current book and what I'm writing now, this will be a little bit of a bridge between where Troy was to where he is now, and
Mm.
it's great
Mm.
because it gives me lots of I've planted seeds in this one that will show up in the next book, which is really cool if you're a reader because you go, oh, I remember where he got that boat or that hat or whatever. So
I like it. I really
yeah,
like
it's
that. I
really
think
cool.
that's a fantastic idea. I look forward to seeing that, and I'll make sure to get it or pre-order it, etc. Whenever
Yeah,
it's
it's
out and
been
about.
it's been fun. It's kind of gotten me going again. It's gotten the juices flowing a little bit.
Yeah. Do you find then that you do, because you're a busy man with the tennis job that you do, and various other things, writing isn't, I mean, I've got time, sometimes fortunately, sometimes unfortunately, to agonize about what my next project should be.
Oh
Whereas
gosh,
I
yeah,
do remember when I had a bit more of a pressing schedule, I was like, just get up and write. And you
yeah,
just make the most of it. Do you know what I mean?
that's right. Yeah,
I'm not
yeah. I
sure
mean,
which one's better and which one's worse, but yeah.
there are so many of us that are just squeezing it in. I've got a 30-minute break, or I've got an hour break. I can get,
Mm,
500,000 words in, and go to it. So you sit down and you do it. And that this has been like, okay, which one do I do now? I've got an hour. What do I want to work on? I've got 14 covers in the queue, and
mm.
some like two, three books that I could be working on. Which one do I do now? So
That's it. That's it.
it's
I mean,
crazy.
do you have like a routine then? Are you a right before work sort of guy, or is it just quite literally, my the person I'm supposed to be coaching hasn't turned up or can't make it for whatever reason. I'm going to get on with this now. Is there a
It's a
regular sort of
it's a
pattern?
little bit. I'm a little bit lucky in that this tennis is kind of what you would call my full-time job, and most of the instruction happens early in the morning and then later in the afternoon.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so there's a pretty good there's often a big chunk in the middle, typically maybe 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And
Hmm.
other than lunch, that's my kind of work schedule. I get off the court, come in, grab something to eat, and then get started on whatever the next project is. And then if I'm really still going at night after the kids are in bed, that's usually 7:30, 8 o'clock. I can get some writing or some covers and things done there.
Mm.
Now the problem is too many good shows have come out now, and I'm watching everything. So I think, I could be watching Wheel of Time, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I know the issue, and too many people keep releasing books that I want to read as well.
oh
That's
my
another
gosh,
big issue.
yeah, yeah.
If my to be read pile wasn't digital, I think I'd have drowned or been
Oh, I
crushed
had, yeah,
beneath it.
yeah. As we discussed, we moved into a new house a couple of years ago, and I kind of lost my office space, which wasn't a big deal. But I had books that I had on a little bookshelf, and I'm not like some of these crazy, like libraries. I just had one bookshelf, but I had to get rid of them. There was just nowhere for them. So that's when I made the transition to a Kindle, and now it's too easy.
Mm,
Luke Richardson's got a book and it's on sale
I
this week.
know.
Bam, add it. And I flipped through the Kindle going, I haven't read that. I haven't read that. Steven's got a new book out. What do I do?
Yeah, I
So
know. Some have been on there for years almost,
yeah,
doesn't it? Once they go beneath that fold, you're just like,
yeah,
oh no.
yeah. I mean, and I read Mark Dawson, who is a big indie guy, and I'm behind. I don't know how many books I haven't read, but I'm way behind because he's very prolific. He writes a
Yeah,
lot, and
yeah,
uh, and I've gotten to where now I kind of split it in the morning and during the day I listen,
yeah.
and at night, I actually read either on the Kindle or an iPad or something.
I
But
think you need to get another couple of weeks down at the Keys, mate, to deal with
oh my
that.
gosh, tell me
But
about it.
make
Yeah.
it a month maybe, rather than your normal 2 weeks or whatever.
I like the way you think. I like the way you
Yeah,
think.
I've got to
Okay,
finish
good.
this reading. I'm not
That's
coming
right.
back until I've caught up.
You guys are on your own. I'm done. I'm out of
Yeah,
here.
that's it. That's it. No,
Yeah.
love it, love it. So your Ryan Bodine books have a sort of thriller.
Hmm.
They're not thriller in the sense of Mark Dawson, who you mentioned a moment ago, or
Right.
or someone else. They're more. There's a sort of
Action.
archaeolog. Is there? Am I right?
Yeah.
There's a sort of
Yes.
archaeological.
Yeah.
Mis-
Action, adventure slash
that's it. Yeah.
archaeological. They do have thrills because they're a lot of times in danger.
Mm, mm, mm.
And to be honest, to be totally fair, Ryan Bodine was a character that I wrote it in. Trying to remember. I think the second Troy book is where Ryan is born. And Ryan is my brother in real life. Ryan Bodine is Ryan Berens. And
Oh right.
so I took a lot of the characteristics that make him and made it into Ryan, obviously a fictional character, but he has the build and all that. So he was a character that I wanted to write, and I just didn't have a lot of time to do it as my other things started getting crazy. but I actually went on at that point and looked for a co-author, and that's where Stephen Moore came in. And I pitched him through 3 or 4 ideas, and he was like, "Nope, I want Ryan. I want to do Ryan, and I wanted to start right now, and I want to do 4 books, and I wanted this and this and this and this." And he really took over. And to be totally honest, he did the lion's share of all of that. I did a lot of the sort of outline. Here's what they're going to, be after, whether it be like an Atlantis adventure or, El Dorado or something like that. And all things that you kind of recognize from the real world, but with a little, fiction sprinkled in. But I would send him the outline, and he would just write it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it would come back, and I would be going through it, going, "Man, this is so cool. This is a great draft." And because of that, we got through our first 4 sort of books, and I approached Steve and I said, "Look, I'm not sure I have the time to keep going with this series, so let me turn it over to you." So he has full control and ownership and everything of it. And he was like, "Well, what about, it's Ryan, it's your character?" And I said, "Nope, not anymore. It's not." I said, he's in one of my Troy books, but he's yours. You do what you will with him." And I think he's working on a new Ryan book right now, but
Yeah.
he took that and made it something better than I ever would have had time to do.
That must be a very interesting thing, because I've done some co-writing, but it's always been me writing the other author's character. I've never sort of given one of my ideas to someone else and seen what they come up with. That must have been it must
was
be quite
good.
nerve-wracking. Like, Steve's a
A
very
little
skilled
bit.
writer. You know
Oh,
what you're going to get with him, but it still must have been a scary sort of process.
I was actually very surprised because I had read some of his. He has a series that's Hiram Kane,
That's right.
and I
Yeah.
had read some of those, and they have an archaeological bend to them. So I had read those, and I was like, this is the kind of setting that I want for Ryan,
Mm.
not knowing that he would just grab it and really run with it. But I said, here's the way I picture Ryan. I think he'd read the book that had Ryan in it, and he had a good idea of what the character should be. And he was in the beginning, he was very like, he would come to me and say, "Is it okay if this happens? Is this in character or whatever?" And I said, "Man, this character is relatively untapped. It's not like he wasn't writing a Star Wars character, that has 10 million people out there going, no, he wouldn't do that, or he didn't do that because of episode whatever
Yeah.
back in the day." There was only one book and a very small reference for what he was. And I was like, "Steve, wherever you think this guy needs to go, that's where he needs to go." So he got very quick at saying, "Okay, I trust Steven, let him go with it, let him run with it." And I would go through at the end and say, "That's a weird one. I don't know about that." And I would just fix it a little bit. But we got to where it was very simple, very easy process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's. But you've got those. We've talked about those. You've also got sort of a mystery series, haven't you? Am I
Hmm.
right in that? That's also Keys related and sort of tropical related.
Yes, there's a cozy mystery series, and that was Kimberly Griggs. And she came on asking about another character. She came to me asking about, I had kind of put it out wide that I was thinking I would like to get a lot of co-authors working with me. And she came up asking about somebody else. And I said, no, I said, that one's already, I've got it slated for someone else to work on. Um, I, I have this really great character in mind. And I described it to her and I said, this kind of fits. She was a cozy author. She was a cozy mystery author. And I said, it kind of fits cozy. We could go very cozy with this. And the idea is that this young lady is related to Hemingway. Her name is Mallory Hemingway. And so through a various, crazy events, she gets hired as the caretaker of the Hemingway house and museum in Key West. And the one of the things about a cozy is it always happens in sort of this sort of quaint location.
Yeah.
It's either a bakery or it's a museum or a strange house or something. But the Hemingway House and Museum was a perfect location. So again, another great example of she took my outline and just made it something that was just brilliant. So
Fantastic.
she took over that series last year. And that was kind of my goal the whole time was to get through 4 or 5 books, see where we were. And if it was something that I had time to keep going with, we would keep going.
Mm.
Or if the author had really had really done so, all we could write together, I would just turn it over. So it was kind of a farming process. I would say, here's
Yeah,
a great idea. Now take it.
it is, isn't it? And I think that
Hmm.
is the main problem of being an author, I suppose, is you've got all these ideas which you want to write, and
Hmm.
you're never going to have the time to write them all. But you've
That's
come up
right.
with an ingenious way to
Well,
sort of explore the ideas
that's right.
without spending 200
Because
hours on the
yeah,
keyboard.
because I'm kind of tapped. There's not a lot of time in here
Mm,
in my life. I have two kids, a 6-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy, and that's 24/7.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
that whenever that happens, the time that you have crunches to pretty small, and it was like I had this just fantastic idea, but zero time to make it work, and that's where the co-authoring business kind of came about, and that
Mm,
was before my cover design business. And so I just basically I shared all of that. I said
yeah.
I got to a point where it was just so much that I couldn't concentrate on anything. And I went to each author and I said, here's the contract that we had, here's the arrangement that we had. I literally dissolved it and said, these are yours now, and I turned it over. And that way I knew that it wasn't gone. It
Yeah.
wasn't just dying out because I didn't have time to spend on it, and it wasn't, you know, sort of languishing in somebody else's hands when I couldn't, put anything forth to it. So,
That's it, isn't it? And that's an
mhm.
important point, I think, to that you learn over the course of writing and publishing is that once the book's out there, it still needs attention. You can't just
Yeah,
put it there and forget. And well, you can, but if you do, it
yeah,
will just sink out of sight and get forgotten
that's
about.
right.
They need to be talked about and kept up to
Hmm.
date. And every few years, you need to refresh the cover or whatever. There's
Yeah,
certain things, isn't there,
hmm,
that you need to sort of do. And I suppose if you write in
yeah,
one series, that's easier because it's one
yeah.
sort of strand. But as you say, you were looking at 3 or 4 different series, which would have been that's
Uh,
almost a full-time thing in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, at that point, I had become a publishing house, to some
Yeah,
extent,
yeah, yeah.
because I was doing the covers, I was basically editing, I was sending to my readers and saying, please, uh, ARC read this, advanced copy read this, and see what works and what doesn't. And it was just so much that I said, okay, I've got to release some of it. I got to let some of it go. And
D-
that was hard, but it's
yeah,
it has become one of the best things ever. So
yeah. It's a good decision, I think, to have done if you can see that they're not reaching the potential that they should have done because
yeah,
they're great books and they need to be read and they need to be you know
yeah, for sure.
marketed and all the other bits and bobs that go into
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Did you find that? And this is I suppose a worry of mine is that, and I suppose it's a worry of all authors, is that by sort of going off and doing another series, you lose sight of the main series, the first series, which is the reason that the readers loved you in the first place. Did you find
Yes.
that readers were frustrated by you going off and doing this, that, and the other, or did they come with you on an exciting journey into different characters?
By and large, they came along. I think most people would come along and say, I liked Mallory Hemingway, but what I really wanted was Troy. And, I liked Ryan, but what I was really hoping for was another Troy book. And at that point, I hadn't released a Troy book in, it's been quite a while.
Mm,
And part of that is early in the Troy series, I just wrote. I just wrote it. I was what you would call a pantser or a non-outliner, and so I was just writing. And I would write myself into circles, and I would get stuck, and I would be like, I don't know how to get
I
out of
know the
this. I
feeling.
gotta go back and
Yeah,
fix this. But then I did learn that I like a pretty significant outline. I typically outline somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7 thousand words, and that allows me to stop working on it and then jump right back in. It's like I said, I have those 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the day. So when I jump back in, I don't want to have to go back and read and figure
mm,
out what's going on. Where is Troy? Why is he doing this? I forgot whose name was whose. And so a significant outline. Now I can go through it really quickly. And I worked really, really hard. And this is maybe it might be obvious to my readers. Book 6, Shark Bait, and book 7, Gator Bite, were the most planning and the most writing and most rewriting that I've ever done.
Mm.
And as a result of that, they took longer. They took
Hmm.
much longer. Gator Bite is by far the longest and by far my favorite. And it's because of all that. It's because of all the work that went into it.
That's interesting that it's your favorite and it's one of the
Mhm.
most recent books you've written as well. Yeah, yeah.
You always love the first one. It's like your first child. You love the first child, but this latest one has qualities you really love too.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I think looking at my own work, and I wonder whether I hope that's something that will just continue as you sort of go on and go through. But I
I
mean,
don't think it will.
do you find then you write this big outline, and I've experimented with all different ways of writing,
Hmm.
and every time I seem to have cracked it, or I think I've cracked it, it doesn't work, and I have to
That's
do
right.
something else. um,
Yes.
do you think when you do the outline that you've put all that work in, and then you sit down to write it, do you ever find that you sort of deviate from it, or you think, no, I can't do that. That doesn't make
Oh,
sense now.
absolutely. If you've written anything, if you're a writer and you've written anything, you come across a time when the character does something that the character wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You had no idea. You did not know that they were going to do that. They did it, and now you got to go back and say, well, how does this work with my narrative? How does this work in the story? And Troy was that way. I mean, Troy would do things, and I'd be like, well, I didn't know that. I had no idea that he was going to do that, but it just came through in that writing, session. So I'd have to go back and I'd fix it. I've gotten better now at saying I need some looseness
yeah.
in this area to allow Troy or allow the character to go. And you get into a place where you head out on a tangent and you go, I don't know if I need that or if it's important. Maybe I've got to bring it back or take it out or whatever. And I've gotten better at that too. It used to be that I would write it and it went in. It didn't matter. But if I write something now and I go, not sure about that. I don't know how it fits. I'll take it out. I'll take it out or save it. Put it in a folder and say, maybe another day I can use this. So
That's it, isn't
that's,
it? Yeah.
hmm
You can always use things again. Like there's great
yeah,
scenes that I've written, and that maybe they come in the same book later on, or maybe they become part of something else. Those
yeah,
words always become useful.
yeah, yeah. And the current project in my collaboration project, I wrote 2,000 words, and then they decided we want to do it in first person, and I was like, oh, great. So I'd written that from Troy's perspective, from not Troy is written in third person, so I'm
Yeah.
outside of him. And I wrote it third person and I wrote it as if I was kind of focusing on Troy. And then we kind of got together and we said the best way to make this work is to, instead of handing off, you know, third person omniscient, let's go with like this first person new protagonist. We're inside his head the whole time and you see like Troy doing whatever Troy would do. And then
Hmm.
it's very easy for me to take that protagonist and pass him off because nobody has to know how, they don't have to go back and study how Troy reacts or what he says or how his speech is and that kind of thing. They can take a new protagonist and run them, pretty much through their own style.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Are you finding that difficult then to write in first person? Because I don't know, I've ever maybe a couple of excerpts, but never anything of length. It must
It's
be a different challenge
it is,
from a
yeah, it's
writer's
very
perspective.
tricky. I have a I have an issue with not knowing when I can describe something.
Mm,
If I'm in a room and it's got uh, sort of green and brown carpet, I struggle with, do I say, you know, Troy noticed that there was green and yellow carpet, or can I say I saw that there was green and
yeah,
yellow carpet?
no one says that,
So
do they? in the, in
it's yeah, and
the...
it's so weird. But of course, I've read things that are in first person, and
Mm,
a lot of psychological thrillers are written in first person
mm,
because you need that interior, struggle or terror or fear or whatever they're going through, and you get it from that first person viewpoint. Third person allows me to jump into, the bad guy's head for a while if I need to. And that's the first Troy book. Every other third chapter was somebody else.
mm.
And it's easier for me in that way because I know, okay, in this section, I'm in the sheriff's mind. And I can easily go, okay, I'm in the sheriff's mind right now. I know what he sees. And you can't then say, well, Troy thought this. because you're still in that, in that sheriff's brain. So first person is weird for me because I'm in Troy's brain as if it were mine,
Mm.
and I don't know how to get outside of that, even though it should seem pretty instinctual. But now that I've gotten into it and I've done it a little bit, it's getting easier. So I figure I'll hand it off, and each person who goes through obviously has to read what's come before. And I've said, look, edit it. As you're going through, if you find things, fix it. Don't
Mm.
ask me,
Mm.
just fix it.
Mm.
And that's nice because if with it being a protagonist that I don't, that I don't own, I can just say, but just if you need
Yeah.
something to, if you need him to say something or his wife's name to be different or whatever, just fix it. So
Yeah, that's it. It must be a great thing. And so then when you hand that off now, are you done with that completely, or will you have to do another section later on?
no, I will be done with my major part of the
Yeah.
draft, and if when it's done, we'll all get a chance to run through.
Hmm.
And that way
Hmm.
we kind of keep things consistent and we're able to say, but remember back here where I did this,
Yeah.
it needs
Yeah.
to resolve or it needs to go away or whatever. So it gives us a chance. And by the time four authors have combed it, it should be pretty, I would say it'd be very clean draft. And hopefully by that time, they'll be able to send it. We have a group of ARC readers already set, and they'll grab it and they'll read it and they'll find all the problems and issues and things like that, and they'll bring it back to us. And then the editor gets it. So
Yeah.
hopefully it'll be clean by that time.
It's an interesting one. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? I always wonder which is quicker, whether it's writing with people or whether it's writing on your own. And I'm not completely sure because I do feel that when you write with someone, there's quite a lot of waiting to get
Yeah,
the thing that you need. And sometimes that's convenient because you can get on with something else, and other times it's not because you're ready
yeah,
to get on with that thing. You
right.
know?
Yeah, if it's your own project, it's up to you. You have to sit down and make it roll.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it's you working with Steve, now it's funny because Steve and I had a very we would it seemed like we were always ready to write or be on the project at the same time. And I'm not kidding. In a Google Doc, you can see where
Yeah.
someone
You
else
can. Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
and I would see, he's only a chapter ahead of me, so I've tried to chase him. And it was funny because that's the only time that's ever happened. Most of the time, I hand off something and I wait, and then I'm going, okay, how much have you got? Where are you? Do you need help? What can I do? So it's cool. This one's different though. We've been in a group chat or a Slack channel going, here's what we want to do. Here's what the character is going to be. And we have a place where you can dump facts and stuff. Troy will come into the possession of a boat during this thing, and there's a picture and what it is and all that. And
Brilliant.
and then a picture of the main characters. Each character has an actor or a model photograph. That way I don't have to go in and dump a big character sketch. I can
Mm.
say this is what the guy looks like. He's from Boston, has a very Boston accent, yada yada yada. So it's easier for me to go, I'm done with my part, take it, and then I don't have to wait on it. I
Mm.
will be waiting to make the run through, but that's kind
Yeah.
of that's
Yeah.
kind of it. It's not like it's a pressing matter.
No, it's a really fascinating idea, and I think there's a lot of positivity there. I look forward to seeing
It
how it
is.
comes out. A lot of positive points. Yeah,
Me
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a wholly different process than I've been involved in ever.
Mm.
So it's kind of neat because, I'm used to having my outline, having my draft, and having maybe even a picture of the cover, and just go.
Mm.
And in this process, I kind of have to think ahead, like where is the character going? I need to make sure that there's a reason to get it to point B, and which is the next set of characters. And so it's been really weird. It's been kind of cool, kind of different, kind of weird, and like I said, it's kind of invigorated me a little bit, which is really good.
Yeah. So far, you've written to sort of change pace a little bit. You've written your cozy mysteries. You've written sort of
Yeah.
the archaeological action adventure thriller. You've
Mhm.
written sci-fi. Is there any other genres that you think I'd love to do that, or is that
That's
it?
probably it. And there's a thread. There's always an element of sort of sort of thrill.
Yeah.
And the Troy series is pretty straight sort of crime thriller. There's almost always kind of a dead body. You got Troy gets messed up in it, and he's got to either clear his name or figure out who did it or whatever. And then there were a couple of the Troy books that had an archaeological, like a find,
Yeah.
but there was always a bad guy, or a bad person coming after him. and he had to figure out why and get out of that mess. Ryan was sort of the true, I guess you'd call it archaeological. He's the treasure hunter.
Mm,
There was
mm,
always a
mm.
next treasure, the lost Hemingway suitcase, or the city of Atlantis, or El Dorado's gold, or whatever. And it became a thriller when we introduced sort of this cult that was after him,
Yes, I
also
remember that. Yeah,
because
yeah,
of
yeah.
all that. And then the cozies, they're kind of their mystery. They're almost straight up, murder she wrote kind of thing. There's a murder, there's something going on, and the main character Mallory has to figure out what happened. And so it's a little bit of a whodunit. You read those going, oh, okay, I wonder who did this. And at the end, there's a big reveal and all that. So the the fantasy is the one that's way off.
Mm.
Um, it fantasy it can have elements of thriller to it, but there's almost always, sort of a goal. It's we've got to get to the whatever to beat the big bad, and it's not really in the thriller, lane. Somebody told me once that basically an epic fantasy is a travel log to try and get to the end point. So
Yes.
they're just kind of recording where they went. They went to a tavern. They went to a wizard's hut, whatever it is, and it's just a stop along the way that propels them to the next stop. And then at the end, you get to the big bad guy's castle or whatever, and you had the amulet and you defeated him. So in that, having gone through all of that, to answer your question is, I don't think there's anything else I want to write. I went way out, and now I'm kind of coming back in.
Yeah.
The tropical author stuff, I call them coastal crime thrillers, are my sort of wheelhouse. That's what I write, and I
Mm.
feel like I write those the best.
Yeah.
So I've circled back around, and both of the writing projects that I have on my plate right now are the tropical, as, and then the caveat is I am rewriting the epic fantasy.
Yeah, it's such a great sort of niche, I think that. And I think
Yeah,
that's a really positive thing, both from you as a sort of brand author, to
yeah,
say this is what I do. Because if readers know they like that, there's only X number of people who do that, and you're there, aren't you?
yeah,
You're in that sort of place.
right.
And from you, because you know what you're doing. You can think, oh, here's the place. I'm going to that particular town. I'm going to,
Yeah,
I'm going to that. This is the problem. This is the
that's right.
solution. This is what he's going to have to do, or whatever.
Yeah. Here's the crazy cast of characters going to meet along the way.
Mm,
That's another part of the Florida fiction stuff is all about the characters. How many kind of very colorful, very wild, very bizarre characters can I mash together on top of a plot that maybe doesn't even make that much of a difference. So it's fun to write. It's fun to read, I think.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, and I like that. There's a lot of things I like about those books. Yeah, absolutely. Dave, this has been fantastic. It's great, excuse me, to have been able to connect like this. After all
Absolutely.
that time of
I know.
exchanging messages.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe it's been that long.
I
That's
know.
wild.
I know. It just goes, doesn't it? And another 2 years will pass just in a heartbeat, I know as well. And
Oh
we'll
gosh. Yep.
have loads more books out. You'll be writing a historical mystery set in ancient Roman
Oh,
times or something.
let's hope not. Oh my gosh. Uh, See how bad I can mess up the history.
Yeah. So you don't fancy that then? You wouldn't fancy
I
a
like
historic.
the only problem with that is I have to be very dedicated to, reality, to facts and figures and
Yeah.
things like that. I'm Stephen Moore, and you guys, I'll leave that to you. If
Uh,
I put Troy in the middle of something and I fake it, it doesn't matter. It's I get to make it up.
that's
So
the great thing, isn't it? With
that's right.
the contemporary things, is you get a
I
bit
always tell
more.
everybody, even if I bring in a real thing, if I bring in a real historical fact, I'm gonna bend it. I'm gonna make it work with the plot. You can go back and you can say, oh, here's how it really happened, but that's not what interests me. I want to make it fun and exciting to read.
Yeah, absolutely. If there is anyone watching who's never read any of your books, what would be one that you'd suggest them to jump into to start with?
Uh, you can always go to Hat Check, which is the first Troy Bodine book. Hat Check was the one that I wrote, and it kicked it all off. And it's still a great book. It's still funny. I still laugh at it, which is kind of weird, but it has everything that I am about. So if you like that one, you'll like the rest of them.
Fantastic, fantastic, Dave. This has been brilliant. I've loved it. Yeah, and keep in touch, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Luke. I really do appreciate it, man. I hope you have a great evening.
I will do. I will do. And thank you for watching Books and Beer at Home. It's been great. I've enjoyed my beer. I hope you have as well. Yeah, Dave's enjoyed his coffee. And thank you for tuning in and watching this. It's brilliant. Next week, I'm joined by Andrew Warren. He's joining me here to talk about his new book, which I think is called Green Code. I think it is. I know all his books are color related. I know he's gone for green this time. So yeah, okay. I look forward to talking to him. And we will be live. We'll live and doing it with in sync with everyone watching at home. So that will be good as well. Dave,